Welcome everybody. Thank you so much for joining me. And so it's still a mystery today for me of what will unfold in our time today. And so I'd love to just start with a meditation and have us just sit together and rest in your own being, your own body, your own ground of the universe. So to really deeply settle into the magnificence of the embodiment that you are, this stunning temple that is just a gift, right? It's a gift, a gifted gift for you to live. There was a resting as the universe, as creation, the sense of identity, of I am, the lens of the sense of self. I'm going to give a little bit more back history. And I've spoken about this lots of times, and it's much more thoroughly explained in other videos, which are available as just public YouTube videos. But the short version here of my awakening experience, the path of unfolding, is or at least elements of it, is the sense of self, who one feels their me is, the me, the I am felt sense. That when that opens up beyond itself, it opens to the plane of oneness that it exists inseparably within. We get to have an individual experience within that, and then can open as oneness. And for me, every time there's been a surrendering from the individuated lens through the oneness of the plane, and then a deeper surrendering through consciousness, the sense of self then opens up as another individuated sense of self, which then in turn opens up in the oneness of that next plane, which is larger. So very simply, human sense of self opening up through oneness of this plane, and you experience yourself as oneness. And that surrendering and opening up through the soul sense of self, and having access to a myriad of lifetimes through that organization of the soul. And then that individuated sense of the soul opens through the oneness of that whole plane. And all of it is one with an individuated lens and experience and sense of self, which then also opens up as the whole sense of self, of oneness of that plane. And so each of these layers continue for me in opening deeper and deeper through an individuated lens that then surrenders through the whole plane. And in that surrendering through the plane and being oneness, all the details of that are then intrinsic and experientially one's own body. And so the wisdom, the knowledge, the function, the capacity, the understanding all then become intrinsic. And every time this process has happened, there's been an experience of the chakras loosely used. I'm using that term loosely, in that they appear different in the different dimensions, the different senses of self, all have those, so far in my experience, have that same organization of function, which is relative to the plane and the scope in which that system is functioning. And so when there was an opening up, I just used the word cosmic body. I didn't know what words to use. There was the experience of all the particles of the universe being my body. And the movements of them were movements of me, movements of my body. And so what I'm speaking about of these last few months and a couple weeks ago and this week are reflections of an integration that's occurring in a larger sense of self through the different chakras or functions of self on that level, that capacity. Let me add one other piece, which is, and again I've spoken about this many times too, this reference of cessation or nothingness, or people often feel like they're going to die. It's each of these dimensional bodies have a perceptual apparatus, let's say. And the sense of identity is embedded in that lens. It's the gift that we give ourselves. We can't experience other unless we create some sense of separation or some sense of division. These words aren't quite right, but this sense of identity on all levels, all sizes, all scopes, is how we make this whole thing work. For oneness to be a universe, it has to differentiate itself from itself in order to then experience itself. And each of these senses of self and planes, the way I was describing a moment ago, or other times I've used the playful language of a player piece on a game board, and stacked player pieces and game boards, stacked in one way, or nesting all inseparable from each other, another way. It's just how the lens one is perceiving the whole thing from. You're gonna describe it differently. It'll look differently depending on which lens or dimensional body or sense of self you're resting in, what the world looks like, what the universe looks like. So when you're resting in a larger, more inclusive sense of self, everything is within you and intrinsic within you and functions within you. And when you collapse into or shift the focus of your aperture into a smaller lens or a more specific lens, then you get to have the focused experience through that aspect. So resting as a larger dimensional body, all humanity is then inside me. As is true for you. When you open up on that level of yourself, all of humanity is inside you. And so far in my experience, there continues to be an individuated experiencer that is also oneness with that whole plane. So when you open up as that inside yourself, you will then both experience, at least the way it looks to me at this point in time, you will experience an individual aspect that's unique, that's inseparable from the oneness, the totality that we all are.